So what lessons are there for other countries? Andries, perhaps you could start.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that really emerged quite clearly, and it's not only because I'm from an Institute of Poverty, Land and Agrarian Studies, is the very instructive comparison between the course of economic growth in South Africa and that was described here in China, and the enormous importance of having a rural sector which provides poor people with something of a safety net and which enables industrialization. I think that's one of the big differences between South Africa and China, which we can learn quite a lot about. I think I'm also very interested in the power of dualistic ways of looking at economy and the attractiveness of, say, the notion that there are at least two Indias. In South Africa, we had similar discourse about the first and second economy, and that slowly led to an analysis in which we think there's one economy with a very large part of the population extremely marginalized within that one economy. Dualistic analysis doesn't quite catch it, but I think there's many interesting lessons to learn from the comparisons in that way. I think the big lesson really is don't do what we did. Don't dispossess very large numbers of your rural people with very little thought to what would happen in the future when they need sustainable employment in the formal economy.
Thank you. I'll pass now to Manfred. Manfred, what lessons do you think emerged from the story of India?
See, this is a country that has 5-year plans, and yet, if ever at the end somebody will tell that there is a strategy, it was an ex-post strategy. And what happened really was more or less smart muddling through, and the proof that you can also enter through the window, you don't have to take the main door. What happened, for example, to the service sector? I mean, they have a service sector growth before they have a real, say, industrial growth. So you can do it the other way around also, and that brings you to, say, specific advantages even that now you can also apply on different fields. I mean, the strength in IT you can use for direct cash transfer things. I mean, there's a huge hope to use that strength to bypass the not existing public sector reform, to bypass the not efficient public delivery systems. So it's a smart way of muddling through. And maybe there's no Indian model in that sense, and if there is one, then it's the model of balancing maximum heterogeneity successfully so far.
Thank you. Fabio, perhaps you could tell us what lessons you feel emerge from Brazil.
Hello. I think that the first lesson can be also read in a negative way, like in South Africa. We spent almost 20 years meddling with our macroeconomic policies until we reach stabilization. So stabilization is not going to lead to equitable growth, but I think it's really a prerequisite. Without it, it's quite hard to have income policies in a responsible way that can lead to reduction in poverty and growth. The other thing that I think will be interesting is that at the end of the presentation for China, we saw this, the limits of having this export-led growth and FDI-led growth. So in the sense that income in China is increasing, and the Chinese want to consume more, they're going to become the largest consumers in the world very soon. And for example, if you read the article 4 of the IMF, they are claiming for China to have social protection policy, large-scale policy, to try to have a huge income policy to try also to correct external international imbalance. So I would like to learn a bit more about the discussions that I have in China, about having social pensions, about having cash transfers, and in which directions the country seems to be going.
Thank you, and that helps me to pass over very, very neatly to Manquan. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the income inequality is worsening in China. Now, I think you could argue that it's to some extent, I think it's true. It's the unfolding of the Kuznets curve, the Kuznets process. Well, you only need to think, tradition. If we start with the agrarian economy, where everyone is more or less equal in terms of income, and moving up to going through the development process, then there is indeed a Kuznets, the Kuznets process working there. Kuznets curve has been discredited in much of the literature, but I think there is this structural transformation which makes the income inequality worse. In the Chinese case, especially because of the huge size of the economy, that obviously would other things being equal, that would push up the income inequality index. I was attending a workshop in Denmark comparing income inequality, the record of income inequality in Denmark with China. You obviously need to think, there must be, are they really comparable? Are these two countries comparable? So the size factor has made or at least could make the income inequality worse in China. Now, there are both the forces to reduce income inequality and forces to push up income inequality. Now, there are forces to reduce income inequality in China. And for example, land is not privately owned, which means a farmer doesn't have to pay any rent to the landlord, and the entire produce or income belongs to him or herself. So that immediately should be a force for a more equal income distribution. There are other factors involved. The fact that in China we do not have, to use Andries' phrase, jobless de-agrarianization, because of many people attribute that to the Hukou system, but I have a different reading of that of it. Also means we wouldn't have as serious income inequality or poverty as in the case where you do have jobless de-agrarianization. But in China, there is a great reluctance to make any commitment to social protection. There has been, in spite of the worsening of income inequality, in spite of the fact that in many, for example, health, etc., there have been huge steps taken in recent years on the health front, but that has been the result of huge public debate. In fact, the health debate on health public policy is a case which would lead me to argue that there has been, on the political front, great opening up and a great transparency in policy making, even though the degree of it is certainly not is yet not on a par with anything which we can find, say, here in a developed country. So, and the case which has been used by many Chinese economists and social scientists to argue against greater social protection is often the Latin American case. They say Latin American case. So I'm particularly interested in the Brazilian situation, and there Fabio has made the analysis, the argument that it appears that social protection policies have worked in Brazil. So I would encourage you to, if you have already a paper, let me have it, and I would encourage you to publish that in China to make people in China think twice about social protection. They are very, very reluctant to make any long-term commitment to social protection, and any social protection measure is really a long-term commitment. So, yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Minquan. I know that Andries had a question earlier that he was wanting to pose. At lunchtime, you were talking about some challenging questions you were going to ask your fellow panelists. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to make that question public.
Well, it's really a question that comes from ignorance and from my understanding of Fabio's paper, which argues that a lot of the inequality reduction comes from increasing incomes from formal sector employment. Now, if I understand you correctly, it's not simply Bolsa, it's also economic growth and better wages. How much of that is financed by Brazil's significant natural resource endowment and its ability to use resources like the rainforest to create jobs? That's an important issue both globally and for us in South Africa who don't have a rainforest.